Hello out there, everybody. Dylan at Ride with GPS here. Thanks so much for taking the time out of your day to spend a little bit of time with us talking about multi-day ride prep. As the shoulder season is now ending in North America, I'm sure, for me, like a lot of the other folks out there, I'm just itching to get outside and do some of those long routes I've been drooling over the past couple of months. Today, during this webinar, we're going to sort of do a multifaceted approach to ride editing and preparation for these longer rides that we're going to be doing. We're going to start out by talking about our web-based route planner, which is where we're going to talk a little bit more about editing existing routes and personalizing them with things like waypoints, points of interest, as well as covering a few context tools that will give you more information on what's going on in the areas you're planning so you can curate a route that is exactly in line with how you actually plan on riding it. About halfway through, we're going to switch from web and start talking a little bit more about our mobile app. We'll talk a little bit about how to organize some of these routes, how to actually locate them. We'll talk a little bit about offline utility, and we'll go into using the mobile route planner to perform some edits and changes and personalization aspects to a route. Then we'll also do a little bit of covering on how navigation actually works so you have everything you need to know in order to get out there. A little bit of housekeeping before we get started. The first thing I wanted to mention is that this webinar is being recorded. It'll be posted to YouTube just a little bit after the webinar is done today, so you'll have something to reference after this is all said and done. At the end of my presentation, we're also going to open this up for some Q&A. My colleague Justin is going to be sitting in the comments during the webinar. Feel free to plug in any questions or concerns you might have while I'm chatting. Justin will feed some of those to me, and I'll spend some time at the very end of the presentation going over those in real time. But without further ado here, let me share over my screen of my account on the web, and we'll start talking about how to edit and curate a nice long route in our web-based route planner. Give me 1 second to get this rolling here. All right. So the screen that we're looking at here is just the default dashboard of my account on the Ride with GPS website. And if you look over here at some of my recent activity, you'll see the two routes I'm going to be playing with today. The first one, and the one that I'm going to be spending most of my time editing, is this Gifford Pinchot super extension route that I've sort of like put together from things that I've done in years past, but I'm still not super familiar with this area. And I want to fine tune this a little bit more, maybe break it into multi-days, that sort of thing. So let me click on this route to see it in full view first. Okay, so we're taking a quick look at the overview of this route. If you look over on the left-hand side, you'll see some of the metrics associated with it. This route in total is 140 miles. It's got about 12,000 feet of elevation gain, which for me is a pretty meaty chunk of a route to do. I'm definitely not going to ride 140 miles with 12,000 feet of elevation gain in one day. I'm actually thinking of doing this and organizing it into maybe a 3-day trip. So let's open this up in the route planner and we'll see a couple of different ways that we can do this. I'll click more, open copy in route planner. And here we are, this route is now loaded in here for editing and planning. So the first thing that I wanted to do is talk about how to change the course of your route. Let's say like this route actually looks really good. I want it pretty much to stay exactly the same after I make some changes to it, but I want to add a couple of excursions. One of which, if I sort of zoom in here, there was this point of interest that was actually added by a friend of mine. And as you see when I hover over it, you can see the description in there. It says, here there's a view and some water here. And so right now my route doesn't actually head to this point of interest. It's just sitting there on my map, which is a nice visual reference. But I actually think I may want to divert my course and head to the specific spot. So as the point of interest indicates, there's supposed to be a view and some water. Maybe I'd like to see if I can get a more up-close view of whatever that is being called out on the map here. First thing I'm going to do is turn on this layers option at the top of the screen, and then I'm going to toggle on community photos real quick. So community photos layer is sort of what it sounds like. These are going to show you photos taken by actual Ride with GPS users and have them geotagged on the map itself. Anywhere you see these little blue dots is indicating that there is a community photo present. Let me zoom in a little bit. And it looks like there is a little community photo icon sitting right there where that point of interest was added. So let me click on this. I get this nice little photo roll. Let me click on it again. And wow, this actually looks like a pretty beautiful view. There's some nice sort of hard packed dirt with some gravel on top, which is exactly what I like to ride. I think I do actually want to divert course and head to this specific spot. So let me hit this X. I'm going to turn off my community photos layer for now. But what I really am a little concerned about, because this area seasonally gets completely covered in snow. A lot of these, pretty much everything on this road is unpaved, and when it gets really wet, it gets pretty hard to ride. And I want to see if somebody's actually gone through and used some of these roads before I start changing my route up. One really useful feature for this is our heat map overlay. And the heat map overlay shows you a visual representation of where people ride their bikes most frequently. I should say that this feature in the Route Planner is available with Premium. And we are taking this data directly from rides recorded publicly within Ride with GPS. So let me turn this on real fast. And as you can see, some purple start to show up on my map, and that's showing me where the bicycle traffic's at. The deeper and darker that color of purple, the more frequent bicycle traffic that road or trail gets. And if I zoom in here, I can see that there's a pretty logical connection here. People have been using this recently. They're heading down this road. They're heading to this cool point of interest, and then back to the planned route. So, editing. One of the ways in which you can edit your route is by clicking the route line and dragging it onto the alternate roads that you want to use. But watch what happens when I do this right now. I click my route line, start dragging it over, and oh man, the section of the route that's potentially changing highlights in black to give me a preview of what the edit's going to look like. And as you can see, a ton of my route is changing, a lot more than I said I wanted, right? So let me let go. That's not what I wanted. Let me hit the undo button in the upper left. So in order to sort of like confine the section of my edit that I want to make, the way that I tell the route planner, hey, I only want to focus on this tiny little section when I click and drag my route line over, is by adding control points. So you may see these, there's two of them right here, these little white dots on my route line. Those are control points, and they serve sort of two main purposes in Ride with GPS. If you're creating a route by clicking as you go, every time you click, one of those little white control points will appear to show you where you specifically clicked while you were building the route. The other thing control points do, though, is they help constrain the structure of your route so you can make targeted and specific edits that only focus on a particular portion of your route. So, and I'll show you this in just a sec, but I say this often. Someone once described thinking about using control points for editing purposes. Think of them like brackets. If you have two control points on your route line, two brackets, the only thing that's going to change when you click and drag the route line along is just what's in between those two control points. So, I'm going to click the control point tool on the right-hand side of my screen. When that tool is turned on in blue, that means that when I click on my route line, I'm just adding control points. I'm not actually adding distance each time I click. And if I'm thinking about leaving my route here to head to this point of interest at this intersection, I'm going to zoom in and I'm going to click to add my first control point just before the point that I plan on leaving. Okay, so there's my first control point. And now I'm going to go and add my second control point just after the point that I plan on rejoining. So if I'm thinking about rejoining my route right here at this intersection, I'm going to click to add my second control point just after the point that I plan on rejoining. Okay, there we go. I got my two control points, my two brackets. Now, if I click and drag my route line over to sort of follow that heat map signature, you can see that the only thing that's changing is just what's in between those two control points. Everything outside of those control points stays exactly the same. This looks exactly like what I had in mind, so I'm going to let go. And now that edit is solidified. My cue sheet on the left-hand side, my list of turn-by-turn directions, is automatically updated with that change that I just made to my route line. So, control points, clicking and dragging, great way to say, hey, I only want to focus on a particular section, and click and drag that route line onto the alternate roads you want to use. This is great if you have like a little point of interest you want to route to, or maybe if you're trying to divert course to head to lodging. Control points, clicking and dragging, great option. So now I want to talk about my sort of another way to edit your route line. And I would say that what I'm about to show you is my favorite method for editing my route line because it's really specific. When I showed you clicking and dragging before, the route line highlights in black to say, hey, if you're not going to use that original route or the original road, we think this is the next best option. But there will inevitably be moments where you have a very specific idea of the alternate routing that you want, and clicking and dragging just isn't giving you exactly what you had in mind. So let me turn off my heat map real fast. So I've heard that there is some pretty awesome mountain biking roughly in this area. And to make this route a little bit more interesting, a little bit more spicy, I would love to see if I can add some of those mountain biking trails into my route here. Right now, I can't really see anything that's specific to mountain biking, but if I head to my layers option and I turn on MTB trail ratings, which is going to show me mountain bike specific infrastructure, I'm seeing that right here, these blue trails are calling out mountain bike specific infrastructure. This looks good to me. I'd really like to sort of divert course, head on this trail here, and then head back to my main route, probably right around there. Let's add some control points real fast, just before I plan on making this edit, and another just after I plan on rejoining. And I'm going to try clicking and dragging my route line over. Okay, this looks pretty good, and it's using some of that mountain bike infrastructure, but not as much as I want. So I have a more specific idea of what I'm looking for here. Let me hit undo. And one thing that not everybody knows is that your elevation profile is interactive. Meaning if I actually put my cursor on the elevation profile at the bottom of the screen, start moving my cursor along, this little yellow dot appears to show you where specifically my cursor is resting. All this is to say that if I zoom in a little bit, actually let me zoom out just a tiny bit more, from the elevation profile, what I'm going to do is sort of delete the portion of route that exists, and I'm going to add in the mountain bike trails instead. So just before my little yellow dot hits that blue line, which is the mountain bike infrastructure I want to route on, I'm going to click and hold down on the elevation profile, drag along, and if you look at the elevation profile, you'll see a little highlight block is forming. And I'm going to highlight just a little bit past where I plan on rejoining my route. Once I let go, the route planner zooms in a little bit, shows the section that I've highlighted in blue on the map so I can see it a little bit better, and automatically reveals some of my selection tools. And the specific one I'm going to show you is delete selection. This is a premium route planning feature. So when I click delete selection, it's going to leave my route the same, except it's going to get rid of the portion that I've highlighted and allow me to route along the alternate routes that I want and rejoin it. So I'm going to hit delete selection, and it kind of looks like I just deleted the entire second half of my route, right? But I haven't. I've split my route into two individual spots. On the screen in red is my active route, my route line heading all the way to the section that I deleted. And then you'll see this little green dot, and then you'll see this faint gray line. And that's the second portion of my route, everything after the section I deleted. If you look on the left-hand side of the screen here, you'll see the active route is highlighted in blue, but then I have this second unnamed route, and if I hover over where it's listed on the left-hand side, it highlights on the map in blue so I can see it a little bit better. Excuse me. Now this green dot is going to appear whenever you have multiple items in your route planner at once. This indicates the start of the next section, and this is ultimately what we're going to click to rejoin the two portions of our route back together. So what I need to do now is zoom in kind of close, and I'm going to plot along the mountain bike infrastructure I want to use. So to do that, I'm going to hit Add to Route. I'm going to click along the trails I'm interested in using. Okay, this is looking great so far. All right, plotting along, plotting along. Let me zoom in just a little bit. So I think right about here is where I'm going to leave and head back to this unpaved road here. Okay, that's looking awesome. I'm heading back to my original route, and now that I'm close enough to that green dot, if I hover over that green dot, we give you a little preview in blue of what this connection is going to look like. This looks great to me. It's exactly what I want. So I click that green dot, and now the two portions of my route are joined back together. Pretty much everything is the same as it originally was, except now I have this little section in between here that takes me on that mountain bike infrastructure that I was talking about earlier. So the delete selection tool is a great option for alternate routing when you have a really specific idea of the alternate roads you want to use, and clicking and dragging just isn't giving you exactly what you had in mind. Okay, the next feature. So I have this really long route, and I need to figure out some camping situations for this, right? Generally speaking, for me personally, I really don't want to ride more than 50 miles in a day, especially doing this type of riding. 50 miles is like just enough time for me to be super tired, but not so tired that I'm not having a good time. So if I look at my elevation profile. Okay, roughly 50 is about here on my map. You can see where my little cursor is resting. What I'm going to do is turn on my layers menu. I'm going to turn off mountain bike for now, and I'm going to turn on highlights. Okay, now that highlights are turned on, these are showing me community added points of interest, which is great context in the areas that we're planning here. So let me zoom in just a little bit. And again, like I'm looking to end at roughly mile 50 here. So let me move my cursor back there so I can see where it's at. All right, so as you can see here, there are some community added points of interest that are calling out dispersed camping. And I can see that there's a water source there too. When I do bikepacking, I pretty much always go for dispersed camping whenever it's possible because I don't need to spend any money on it. And the fact that this specific dispersed camping site has water access is great because now I don't need to carry a ton of water with me. So what you're ultimately going to do when you see community added points of interest that you want to include in your actual route line is if you click that point of interest, you'll see a little bit of description information that's been added by the person who actually went through and created it. You're also going to see the option to include in route. And when you select that, that diverts the course of your route to take you to that point of interest. Okay, but before I click that, I want to make sure that my route doesn't change when we head to this spot. So I'm going to add some control points first. Click the control point button. Click one just before I think we're going to leave. Add another one just after I think we plan on rejoining. Click that point of interest, include in route, and now you can see the route diverse course to take me to that specific point of interest. And because that point of interest has been added to my route line, it becomes what we call a waypoint. So points of interest can be added to the map itself or to the actual route line. When a point of interest is added to the route line, it becomes a waypoint, which means you still have that visual point of interest marker on the map. You also see it in the elevation profile, and most importantly, that is also now included in your cue sheet. And your cue sheet is what our app and any service you send this route to is going to use to generate those turn-by-turn navigation prompts. So when you add a point of interest to the route line, it's actually called out in the cue sheet and will be announced like a cue announcement during navigation itself. You can also add points of interest of your own. And one way that I do this often, specifically for bikepacking trips, is I like to call out potential water sources. These aren't the kind of thing that I'm going to add directly to the route line because I'm not planning on stopping there, but I at least want to see where water resupply is in case I'm running low and need to make a decision in the moment. So let me zoom in kind of close here. If I'm looking at some of these like stream tributaries here, I can see it crosses my path. This is a great potential water source and maybe I want to call it out. To add a point of interest, I click the custom POI button. Click on the map where I want it added. That pulls up the point of interest save form. And from this drop-down menu here, there's a whole bunch of different icons you can choose from. I'll choose water. And in the name, I'll say potential water source. I can add a description, link to a website. I've seen people do that if they're going to go to a restaurant and want to include the menu, or maybe they're going to head to like a hotel and want to include some information there. Once I hit save, that point of interest is now officially added to my map, but because it's on the map and not on my route line, it's just a visual marker. I'll see this in our app during navigation and can decide in the moment whether I want to go there or not. One last thing about waypoints before I move on. Waypoints will transfer over to external GPS devices like a Garmin or Wahoo unit if you use one of those for navigation. Waypoints, custom POI, and the use of our highlights layer is a great way to get more context in the areas that you're planning and sort of like curate your route a little bit more to your riding style and make sure you don't miss something really important along the way. Okay, so let me turn off my highlights layer for a minute. Now I've got this really awesome route. You know, I've called out one campsite for now. I think that's enough for this little demo. I don't want to do any more than that for now. But now I have this route, and you know, I'm not going to do this whole thing in one day. I want to split it into smaller, more manageable chunks. And before I do this, I want to just quickly say, you know, there are people out there who are going to be doing a route like this that maybe is like a 3-day trip. It's, you know, 100 miles, maybe 200 miles. If that's the case, I would definitely recommend splitting the route up by day so you have a nice orderly itinerary. But if, for example, you're going to be doing a route that is hundreds of miles, maybe thousands of miles, you still probably want to break that route up into smaller segments so that it's more manageable on your phone or any device you send it to. If that's you and you need to split it up, I would recommend keeping the longest individual segment of route to about 250 miles, which is about 400 kilometers or less. That's sort of the magical file size that will work well no matter where you plan on using that route. But for the purposes of this demo here and this route that I'm going to do, I'm going to split this route up by day. One way you can do this is by hitting the split route button on the right-hand side of the screen, and then you can click on the route line or from the elevation profile where you want to perform a split. But the way I like to do this, because I personally find it to be a little bit easier, is splitting directly from the elevation profile using the right-click menu. So I move my cursor along, I'm going to rest it here just after that little campsite. I'm going to right-click, and then I'm going to hit where it says Split Route. And that breaks my route into two sections. On the screen in red, my active route is everything leading up to the split that I performed. On the screen in gray here is the second portion of my route, everything after that first split that I performed. And if you look on the left-hand side of the screen, you'll see both of those routes listed in here. So if you are taking a large route and splitting it into smaller segments, I would highly recommend that you save as you go. So I perform my first split. Now I'm going to hit save at the bottom left-hand corner of the screen. And I'll call this Gifford Pinchot Day 1. Actually, Gifford Pinchot Tour Day 1. So I'll hit save. Now that segment of this route has been saved to my route library, but I still have more work to do. I still need to go in and subsequently split those route up a little bit more. So instead of viewing the route, I'm going to hit this X. That allows me to stay in the route planner. And as you can see, my active route now has a title. And I'm going to sort of rinse and repeat these steps. I'm going to make the inactive route active. This is everything after that first split. And I'm going to move my cursor from the elevation profile here. I believe, if I remember correctly, there's probably some camping right at this 53-mile mark. So I'm going to right-click, split route. And now that I have this split into two more segments, I'm going to hit save. And this will be Gifford Pinchot Tour Day 2. And then I hit save. Okay, and I got one last route to save, so I hit the X. Head back to that last unnamed route, click it to make it active. And then I'm going to click save. And this will be Gifford Pinchot Tour Day 3. And save route. Okay, so now I have this big route saved into 3 individual segments. And you know, I'm a pretty organized guy. I like to keep things nice and tidy. And what I don't really want is 3 routes just floating around not in one central area, because when I do this tour, I want to be able to see everything kind of in one space. So in order to sort of folder this a little bit better, I'm going to create a collection. To create a collection, I'm going to leave my route planner. So I'm going to head to my dashboard by hitting the little Ride with GPS icon on the upper left. And then on the left-hand side panel here, you'll see a collections option, which I'll click. And I'm going to create a new collection. And I'll give it a title. I'll say Gifford Pinchot 3-Day Tour. All right. I can add a description, 3 days of wonderful wilderness riding. You can add a collection banner. Let me see if I can find a good banner image. I'll use this bikepacking photo that I took a while back. I think I actually took this when I was riding there. And now I'm going to hit Save Collection. Okay, that takes me to the collection page, and you can see my nice, beautiful banner at the top. But there are no routes in here just yet, so I'm going to hit where it says Add Items at the bottom. And that little option gives you like a direct line into your route library, so you can pull in existing routes without actually leaving your route planner. So I'm going to select these 3, 1, 2, 3, add to collection. And what that does is it generates this nice interactive map that shows you all of your routes, all of the individual routes on one map, and color codes them so you can see where one segment ends and the other begins nice and easily. If you look on the left-hand side, you'll see a list view of each of those individual routes. And if you hover over one of those routes, you'll see it highlighted on the map so you can see specifically which one you're looking at. Collections are great, not just from the visual perspective, but they're also really easy to share with other people. So if I hit this little share option right here in the middle, just underneath my title, I can copy a link, which honestly is like the easiest way for me to share this out. I can then email it or text it to other people. I can also search for other Ride with GPS users that I follow and send it to them that way. But this looks great for now, so I'm just going to leave it as is. Alrighty, let me switch back to my main screen here. So we've talked about looking at stuff on the web. We've talked about breaking a route into smaller sections. We've talked about some of the context features that you can access here, and how to sort of curate things a little bit more by adding stuff like points of interest and waypoints. Right about now, I'm going to switch to going over more of the mobile app specific stuff. Give me 1 second to wake my phone up here, and I will share it on over. Okay. All right. So the screen that we're looking at now is the home screen of my Ride with GPS app. And the first thing that I want to show you is how to find that collection that I created earlier. If you look at the top of my screen, I'm going to sort of move this back and forth so you can see it better. This is like the quick access menu bar. It allows you to jump from the home page to another spot in our app quickly and easily. But since I have a collection created, I see a little collections icon. And if I tap that, I can see that Gifford Pinchot 3-day tour listed at the top of my Your Collections option. And if I tap that, I can now see the entire collection and all of the routes that are included in there. That interactive map view is only available on the web just because your phone screen doesn't have a ton of space, but I can still see the individual routes that are included in here. Okay, so one of the first things that I want to talk about is some of the offline utility of Ride with GPS. Real quick, within your collections view, let's say I want to individually download some of these routes for offline use. If I look to the right of one of the routes listed, there's like that 3-dot menu. And if I tap that, one of the options in here is download for offline. And if I tap that, you can see just underneath the title that there's a little download pending icon, and the process is super quick to download a route for offline use. It's already available. And what that means is when you download a route for offline use, you've taken the route, those turn-by-turn directions, the map itself from our servers, and stored it locally on your phone, so you'll be able to navigate it even if you don't have access to cell reception or Wi-Fi connection. One of the added benefits of doing this is you can actually navigate an offline route with your phone in airplane mode. Airplane mode prevents your phone from attempting to connect to cell data, even if a cell data connection isn't available, which uses a ton of battery. Offline maps or offline routes navigated with your phone in airplane mode will drastically extend your battery. My little anecdote for this is when I do my bikepacking trips, I can usually get between 8 and 10 hours of navigation on a single battery charge when navigating offline routes with my phone in airplane mode. So effectively, and this is sort of my own little personal opinion I'll throw in here, but when I actually do my trips, my primary navigation device is like my Wahoo device, my Wahoo GPS unit, mounted to my handlebars. I like having it up there. It's pretty small, so it doesn't take up a ton of space. And they have a nice, really robust battery life, so it's just like a nice thing to have. But I will tell you now, if you're anything like me, I'm an imperfect person. I cannot tell you how many times I've packed up my whole bike full of all of the gear that I need. I've gone through my checklist and made sure I have everything that I needed, only to realize about halfway through the ride the next day that I totally forgot to fully charge my Wahoo device, and halfway through my trip, it dies. Having the route downloaded for offline use in my Ride with GPS mobile app ensures that if one device fails for whatever reason, I, as a safety, have a backup to use in case something crazy happens. So even if you're, primarily an external GPS device user, I think the Ride with GPS app and offline routes is a great added utility for that. And if you don't have an external GPS device and don't want to spring the money for that, our app can be used in place of that instead too. So I've talked about downloading individual routes for offline use. And if any of you attended the previous webinar I did on YouTube a couple of weeks ago, I did cover this, but I want to go over it again because I think it's really useful. Instead of downloading individual routes, you can actually now download region maps, which is really nice. So for me, I'm typically riding in Oregon and like Southern Washington. I have a 2-year-old at home right now, which means that my time away from home is limited. I can't really be gone for that long. And if I'm typically riding in the same place, it makes sense to download an offline map, because when you do that, any route included within that offline map will be automatically downloaded and accessible for offline use. So let me show you how to do this. To download an offline map, you're going to go to the More option in the lower right-hand corner of the screen. Then go to where it says Offline Maps, kind of in the middle. You're going to tap New Offline Map. That opens up this little bounding box, and that little blue dot is focusing over my current location. I'm in Portland, Oregon, if you haven't already sussed that out. So this map can be interacted with. So if I expand or contract, I can sort of move this map around so it's encompassing the area in which I currently or typically ride. You can make this actually pretty big, or you can keep it kind of finite if you want to. And if you look down below at the bottom of my screen, excuse me, you'll see a little bit of information of what's included in here. It shows you the map size, but at the very bottom it shows you that 142 routes in my route library are now included within this download. So if I hit download, the download speed for a region map is going to take a little bit longer than for an individual map. It's still pretty quick, but since the size of the map is much larger, it just goes a little bit slower than individual route maps. But once this actually completes, all of the routes included within this region will be downloaded for offline use. And this is also a really nice feature if maybe you're not navigating routes, but you're just like recording rides. Having this base map downloaded for offline use ensures that you won't lose like map fidelity or like a nice high quality image of the map while you're actually navigating or recording a ride, which is pretty nice. So you can see that it's already done. That's great. Now, just for fun, if I head back to my collection on the main screen, you can see that there are check marks underneath the titles of each one of those included routes, which means that all of them have been successfully downloaded to my phone for offline use. So offline routes, offline maps, a great resource if you are trying to make sure that regardless of your connection to the outside world, you will still be able to navigate the routes and see where you are in real time, even if you don't have good connection. Okay, so now what I want to do is head to our mobile route planner to show you how to make some changes and edits to routes when you're actually out there in the field. A quick thing to mention here is that you do need cell data or Wi-Fi connection for the mobile route planner to work. So this isn't going to be available if you're offline, but let's say you're doing a road tour and plans are sort of changing. You need to divert the course of your route a little bit. The mobile route planner is a great way to take care of that stuff while you're in the field. Last thing before I show this to you, you have access to the route planner on the web and in the mobile app. I would advise you to do as much of your planning ahead of time on the website as you can. The bigger screen of a computer gives you a lot more editing abilities, so you have a much bigger workspace to go with. Whereas the mobile app has a smaller screen, you can still do what you need to do. It's just you have to be a little bit more careful with how you go about it. So let me head to my route library. Head to my routes, and I'm going to take this Portland to Olympia route. So this one is about 130 miles in total. I might do this in like 2 or 3 days, who knows, but I want to make some changes and edits to it. So in order, disregard that. What I want to do is open this in my planner, and if you look at the bottom of my screen here, there's a whole bunch of buttons, and if I pan over, there is a plan button. If I tap that, this route is now loaded in my route planner for editing. So one of the first things I want to do is see if I can spot some lodging along this route. And I think I'm probably going to want to stop for my first section in Longview. So let me zoom in kind of close to Longview. And I'm not seeing anything popping up just yet, but let me turn on my highlights overlay, similar to what we saw on the web-based route planner. Your overlay menu, if you look in the bottom left-hand corner of the map, there is like a white circle with stacked squares in it. It kind of looks like a graduation cap. If you tap that, this is a list of all of the available map layers and overlays that you can choose from. I'm going to turn on highlights and done. And now I'm seeing a bunch of community added points of interest on my route. The closer you zoom in, the more you'll see. And look, there is a Best Western sitting right there. That looks great. I'm going to tap that point of interest. And when I tap it, I can see some description information down below. One of the options here is include in route. I'm going to tap that. What that does is diverts the course of my route, takes me to that point of interest. The point of interest is added to the route line, which makes it a waypoint, and that means it's going to transfer over to an external GPS device like a Wahoo or Garmin unit, which is awesome. Okay, so I have that. That's cool. Let me see if I can find some other potential camping spaces. Ooh, Vader, one of the coolest names for a town. I can see that there are some campsites shown over here. Another way for you to edit your route line is by tapping the route line roughly in the area you plan on making that edit. From the menu options that appear here, you have a move option at the bottom, which I'll tap. That adds this little crosshairs icon to the map. And if you now pan your map so that it rests on the area that you want to route to, the alternate area you want to route to, I'm going to zoom in just a little bit here. Even closer. Okay, so if that looks about right to me, I tap confirm move. And now that edit is solidified. And if I want to actually include that point of interest on the route line, I'll tap it, include in route. And now that has been added as a waypoint. So the other method for changing your route line, if you need to change things up, is by tapping move and then moving the crosshairs over to the alternate road that you want to use. And now one last edit I want to make to this route. Let me head back into Portland here. So I'm actually going to be meeting my buddy before we head out in Laurelhurst Park, which you can see right over here in the middle of my screen. One new addition to the route planner is the ability for you to change course by long pressing on an area that you want to route to. So if I take my finger and long press on Laurelhurst Park, one of the options I get is include in route. One little sidebar here, when you're editing your route line, you'll see a route to here or include in route option. Include in route diverts the course of your route in the middle to take you to that point of interest and then onward to your desired destination. Route to here is going to connect the last plotted point to this new point that you've selected. And for me, since this is way back, far away from my endpoint, it's going to route all the way back to here, which is not what I want. I want include in route. I tap include in route. And now I head to Laurelhurst and onward, which is really, really nice. And let me turn off my highlights layer real fast, just so we can see those point of interest that I actually added to my route line, which again are being called out nice and clearly and will be there during navigation as well. If I tap on any of those point of interest while I'm navigating, I will be able to see any description information that I added in there, all that good stuff. So this route looks pretty good to me. I made a couple of edits. I moved the route line over a little bit, added some point of interest. Let me hit done in the lower right-hand corner. And then I'm going to hit save. When you're working on an existing route and you make changes and edits to it and you hit save, you'll see two options for saving. Save as new. That's going to save this route in addition to that previous one that was loaded on. Or if I hit update, that will replace the original version of this route with this new updated version that I just made. And that's what I'm going to do here. I'll hit update. And there we go. That route is sitting in my route library and now updated to include all of the little edits that I just made over here in the route planner. All right, so that's using the mobile route planner to make changes and edits, add waypoints, add point of interest along the way. What I want to do now is give you more of a practical walkthrough of how navigation works. I'm going to do this using some local routes that I have here. Well, I bet most of the people in here have experienced navigation before. There are a couple of features that not everybody finds on their own that can be particularly useful when navigating multi-day routes and that sort of thing. So I use my home to Rocky route as an example. What I'll quickly mention here is in viewing the route, we call this the route show page. It's just a more up-close view of that one specific route. If you look, you'll see my little blue dot sitting at the start icon. So I'm at the start, ready to roll here. So I'm just going to hit navigate in the lower left-hand corner. Okay, so that takes me into the navigation screen. I am actively navigating this route. If you look at the top of the screen, you'll see my first direction being displayed. Turn right on the Southeast Ogden Street. I have voice navigation enabled here, so I'll actually hear that cue being read aloud to me during navigation. Once I make that first turn, the next consecutive cue will display, and I'll be continually updated of this as I go along in real time. One thing I wanted to mention is right now, by default, the map is going to orient with north at the top of the screen, regardless of your direction and heading. And for me, as someone who is directionally challenged and gets lost all the time without this app, I'm a perfect use case for Rabbit GPS, because if I didn't have it, I would not know where I am. I like having north at the top of the screen, but a lot of people don't like that. They want the map to orient in the direction of travel. If that's you, tap that little compass icon with north pointing upwards, kind of in the lower left-hand corner of my map. When that turns black, auto rotate is enabled, and you can see my map doing this. It's sort of orienting itself in the actual direction of travel. I'm standing still right now, and we're using your phone's GPS to figure out which way you're facing. It's not a magnetic compass, so you do need to be moving a little bit in order for it to correctly do its thing. But even still, standing still right now, it's doing a pretty good job of figuring exactly which way I'm facing. If you decide you don't like that, tap that icon once more, and now north is always at the top of the screen. Now I want to bring our attention to the metrics being shown at the bottom of the screen. It says distance, distant left, speed, duration, ETA. You have two screens of metrics. If you swipe to the left, you can reveal another screen. What you're seeing on the screen here is entirely customizable. So maybe distance left isn't something I'm interested in. Maybe I'd rather see something like climb left. If I take my finger and long press on where it says distance left, that pulls up a list of all of the available metrics we can choose from in its place. So I'm going to choose climb left. And where distance left was, climb left now appears, which is awesome. And one metric I wanted to mention briefly before I move on is this ETA metric, estimated time of arrival. This metric is cool because it's using estimated time, which is a feature based on your past ride history. We're looking at your past ride history and we're saying, hey, based on what you typically do, based on your riding style in the past, we think it's going to take you this long to do the specific route that you have loaded in here. And that's cool, but let's say like all of my rides on my account, all of my activity recordings were done on my carbon road bike, which is the fastest I'm ever going to be. Except today, I'm riding my steel bikepacking bike, which is loaded full of gear, and I'm just not moving super fast. Our app is going to see your current fitness level, direction, and heading, and will adjust ETA dynamically based on how fast you are currently going, which is really nice. You get a nice accurate estimation of how long this route's going to take you, even if you're moving slower than you normally do. Next feature, which is one of my favorites for navigation, is interacting with the elevation profile for the route. If you look at the bottom middle of my screen where the orange pause button is, just to the left up there, you'll see a little elevation option. And if I tap that, you see the elevation profile for the route in real time. It's a little tough to see in the screen share potentially, but in the far left-hand corner, you'll see my little blue dot along the elevation profile. If I was riding right now, you'd see it moving along the elevation profile as well. If I expand my elevation profile by tapping the little up arrow on the right-hand side, I can tap on the elevation profile one more time to reveal the elevation scrubber, which I can move to anywhere along the route that I want to get more information on that specific point. So where my scrubber is resting is at mile 7.6 at an elevation of 327 feet at a grade of 6.5%. And that last number is the estimated time. It's saying that it's going to take me 33 minutes and 7 seconds based on my past ride recording history to get to that specific spot along the route. What I'm about to say is only half of a joke. This feature is awesome. It's really nice to be able to see this information while you're actually out on a ride. But the joke part of this is a blessing and a curse. There is nothing like riding uphill all day long only to turn on your elevation profile and realize that you still have a ton of climbing left over. Sometimes if I have this turned on all the time, it makes me feel like I'm going a lot slower. So use it as needed, hide it when you don't need it, but know that it's there, it'll help you out. If I collapse my elevation profile by hitting the orange down arrow on the right-hand side, I can go back to my metric screen and have that instead. So that is a quick once over on just like navigating a route when you are at the designated start point. I'm going to finish this route by tapping and holding down the orange pause button at the bottom middle of the screen. Finish ride. And let me delete this. The next thing I want to show you is what happens when you start navigation for a planned route and you are not sitting at the designated start point. This would be a really nice feature if, let's say, like you're doing a road tour and you are staying at a hotel that's off route. You wake up in the morning, you're leaving the hotel, and you just need to get back to your planned route as quickly and as easily as you can. So let me find this route here. If you look at my blue dot in relation to the route line, you'll see that I'm not on the route line, I'm not close to it right now, but I'm gonna hit navigate anyway. Okay, a couple things happen. If you look at the top of the screen, you're gonna see an off-course alert. So if during the process of navigation, you leave your planned route on purpose or on accident, you're gonna hear an audible off-course alert, and I promise you'll know it when you hear it. It sounds like an alarm sound. You'll take out your app, you'll see that you're off course, and just underneath off course, in orange, it says tap to route back to course. If you tap that, our app's gonna give you turn-by-turn directions to the nearest point of your existing route. We may have you backtrack a bit. The idea is we wanna get you from where you are back to your planned route as safely as we can. If you go off course on purpose and you don't want the app to yell at you, just hit the X to the right of the off-course alert. That'll clear out the off-course and allow you to just record your activity until you eventually hop back onto that planned route. One little side note to say here, in order for navigation to work, you need to navigate the route in the direction it was planned. It's okay if you're not at the designated start point. As long as you're on the route line and moving in the direction it was planned, navigation will pick up from the point that you joined that route on forward. Which brings me to the options down below, which are the things that you're going to be using when you're heading out that hotel in the morning and you want to get back to your planned route. Route to start, that'll route you to the designated start point of your route. Probably don't want to do that unless you're halfway through your planned route, right? Route to nearest point, that's likely what you're going to want to use. That's going to give you turn-by-turn directions from your current location to the nearest point of the existing route. Start off course will allow you to just record your activity until you eventually make your way over to that planned route, hop on it, and start moving in the direction it was planned. I'm going to hit route to start just so you can see what this looks like. So if I zoom out a bit, you can see this light blue route line taking me into this grayed out route line. The light blue route line is the one that was just made for me to get me to the designated start point. And that gray line is the original route that I had loaded in here. Once I finish that light blue, hop onto the gray, gray turns blue, and I'll start getting those original navigation prompts from that point forward. One last thing before I switch over to the Q&A portion. Let's say that I've had a total change of plans here, and I actually just want to navigate to the top of Mount Tabor, which I'm showing you in the middle of my screen. If I take my finger and long press on the top of Mount Tabor, we quickly generate a route using the roads that are safest for cycling from my current location to the top of Mount Tabor, which is where I sort of held my finger down on the map. And if I hit update navigation, that's now the route that I'm navigating instead of the one that was originally loaded in. Let me end this recording real fast, and I will head over to see what questions got dropped over from Justin in the Q&A. Give me one moment here to get this rolling. All right. Okay, let's see what Justin has for me. Okay, so first question is, what is your experience in regards to really long routes, several hundreds of kms on GPS devices? In the early days, they struggled with long routes. Is that still the case? Splitting a route into multiple parts is a better approach anyway. So it's a great question. GPS devices have gotten really, really good over the years. So some of the things that you may have experienced back in the day, aren't really things that you need to worry about too much. But as a general recommendation, I think like the best practice is if you have like a really long route that's like hundreds and hundreds of miles, I would recommend breaking that into smaller segments. I think the metric that I gave earlier is like 250 miles, 400 kilometers or less. The reason that's my recommendation is, and I'll say like the reality is you could probably get away with navigating a route that's like 500 miles, even more than that without any issue. But best practices is that 250 mile to 400 kilometers, because that's in our testing what we've seen work really well, not just in our app, but in any external GPS device. And not only is it sort of better from the performance perspective, but I think it's also just sort of nice from an organizational perspective to have things broken up like that. I find that my brain just seems to like it set up that way a little bit more. And again, when you're navigating, if you stop navigating, like you call it quits for the night, maybe you're 100 miles in on a 250-mile segment. The next day when you start navigation up again, you're going to be able to pick up right where you left off. So you don't always need to worry about breaking it up by day. All right, next question we have. Let's see. Oh, somebody really likes the delete selection tool. Let's see. Let me just figure it out. I previously figured to delete the rest of my route and thought that the behavior was a bug, so they retraced it. Yeah, so I will sort of tell everybody here, I've mentioned this a couple times, the delete selection tool is my absolute favorite route editing tool. To be honest with you, I use that more frequently than I use control points and click and drag, just because I'm a really picky person. If I make an edit to my route line, I want it to be very specific. And oftentimes, if I click and drag the route line, like that's gonna give me a pretty good route. But being a picky person, I really like to tell the route planner exactly where I want my alternate routing to go. The delete selection tool takes some tries to get a good hang of, but if you remember to start your selection in the elevation profile just before you plan on leaving and select just a little bit after you plan on rejoining, it makes combining everything back together a lot easier. Feel free to reference the recording of me doing that too if you need to remember the steps to make it happen on your own. Okay, we got another question. Are POIs really shown on the map using Garmin devices when not included in the route? So for Garmin devices, point of interest that have just been added to the map are not going to appear on the Garmin natively by wirelessly syncing. Only points of interest, which are actually added to the route line, will be visible on the route line and announced like any other cue sheet entry. Just for fun here though, not to make this too confusing, I'm going to share my screen back over because there is technically a way that you can get point of interest on a route to display on your Garmin device, but it requires you to plug your Garmin into your computer and sort of manually export that route as a file. Let me show you real quick how to do that. Give me one moment. Oops. Okay, let's go back to that main scene. So here we are at the main scene. Let me use, here, I'll use this full route as my example. Ooh, actually, no, that one doesn't have enough POI on it. I think maybe day one did. Okay, cool. So we have this one POI. This is actually added to the route line, but actually we have this other one that's added off of it. So if I had my Garmin device plugged into my computer and I really wanted to make sure that my point of interest showed up on there, you hit more, export as file. From these menu options, there's a whole bunch of different file types to choose from. But if you select GPX track file and include POI as waypoints, you'll download this to your computer. And then once you plug your Garmin device in, you can just drag this over to your new files folder. The process is going to be a little different depending on which Garmin device you use. But once this actually makes its way onto your Garmin, those point of interest are added as waypoints to your actual base map in your Garmin, so they're sort of permanently sitting there so that any subsequent route or ride that you take through that area will show those waypoints that you've added. So it's a little bit of a workaround, but if you really need to get some point of interest onto your Garmin device that are not included on the route line, this is a great way to make that happen. Okay. Let's see here. When doing a multi-day ride and don't know where you're stopping each day, what do you do? If paused at night, will it pick up the next day? I use Wahoo Roam. So I'm going to answer this question. That's a great question. I'm going to answer it in relation to the Ride with GPS app. I'll sort of quickly say like, yeah, we know a lot about how Wahoos work, but if you have a question on how specifically navigation is going to work on a Wahoo device, it's best to reach out to Wahoo. Having said that, this is pretty much going to work the same on either one of these devices. So let's say you're doing a remote bikepacking route. You're downloaded your app for offline. You're navigating in airplane mode. It's day one, and you're ending your navigation session that day in the middle of the forest without any cell reception or Wi-Fi. I've been there. Prior to working here, I was a little nervous that I wasn't going to be able to start up the next day, but don't worry. Finish, save your recording in our app. You can also do it on your Wahoo device. Then when you wake up in the morning, find the next route that you're going to do, tap that navigate button, and it'll start from exactly where you're sitting. Because that route's been downloaded for offline use, it's accessible whether you have cell data or not, so you don't need to worry about it working the next day when you're actually ready to start rolling again. And it really, like for me anyway, it works the same way on my Wahoo device. Once those routes are on your Wahoo, they're stored locally on that device, so you can really hit navigate when you're ready, and it'll pick up from the point that you joined it forward. Good question. Why would I want a collection rather than an event? So that's a great question. I think events are a really good option for organizing routes if you have a specific duration of time in mind that you're going to be doing it. So, let's say that I really wanted to do my section of routes between, 3 specific dates. Maybe I'm going to be doing them on May 22nd, 23rd, and 24th. Because there is a time frame, I think adding them into into an event would be a good option, just because you can sort of specify how long this is going for. It also makes coordinating with other people a little bit easier, because if you share an event out, people can RSVP to it and see it a little bit better, save it to their phones. But really the functionality of both collections and events is sort of similar. I think I personally prefer collections because even if I don't have a time frame in mind, or even if I do have a time frame in mind, I like that my collections are sort of permanently there. There's no specific date attached to it. So next year, if I plan on doing the same section of routes, I just head right back into that collection and use it again. So long story short here, I think collections when you don't have a time frame in mind, but you want to see everything on the same map. Events when you do have a specific duration in mind, and maybe you're coordinating like a group ride. I think that events work a little bit better for that. Let's see. Next question. Can I please demo a simple download of a route onto my phone for offline use and then navigate to the location on your phone? I expect the files to be in downloads folder in the files app. So, okay, that's a great thing, or a great question rather. Let me share this over real fast. I gotta wake up my screen share from my phone. Give me one moment. Okay. And real fast, while I'm queuing this up, I'm going to get rid of that region map so we see my individual route downloads. But I think the confusion's probably coming here because when you download a route for offline use, it's not going to be in your files folder. It's actually sitting within the Ride with GPS app. So let me show you how to do that. Give me 1 second. Okay. So real quick, I'm going to find a random route to use as an example here. I'm going to search for this in Explorer. Explorer is the feature. It's really awesome in our app. It allows you to search in an area of interest for existing routes, so you don't need to build one from scratch. The Explorer feature is in the bottom left-hand corner of my screen. It's that little magnifying glass. Okay, so now I'm seeing a bunch of different routes. These are the most popular routes that run through the area in which I'm looking. If I drag up from the bottom of the screen, I can see just one route at a time, and then swipe to the left to see if one of these individual routes is something that I'm interested in using or not. Let's see, this Council Crest Hewitt Zoo Loop is pretty cool, so let me see this one in full view. I'm going to tap the title to see it. So in order to download this route for offline use individually, I tap the Save button at the bottom of the screen. And then from the options that appear, I tap where it says Download for Offline. Okay, just underneath the title, you can see the download pending thing. Process is already done. The route has been downloaded for offline use. Well, that's great. How do I actually find the offline route? Here's how you do it. So you hit the back button in the upper left, and we're going to head to our route library. You can get to the route library. It's at the bottom right-hand side of the screen. There's a little library icon. If you tap in here, if you look at the very top of my screen, you'll see that there are 3 different tabs listed. You have your activities, which is the recording of your activities. Side note, if you are navigating a route in Ride with GPS, you're simultaneously recording your activity. Once you finish and save that recording at the end of the day, this is where it ends up. So you have your activities, you have your routes tab. Routes are typically going to be routes that you've personally created sitting in here. But then you have your collections tab. And in your collections tab, second from the top, you'll see that I have an offline tab. Oops, sorry, I clicked that a little fast. So I'll tap offline. And in your offline tab will contain any routes that have been downloaded to your phone for offline use. So as you can see here, I have the Council Crest Hewitt Zoo Loop downloaded for offline. Great, that means I can access it even if I don't have cell reception or Wi-Fi connection. And just for fun here, so I tap this route to see it in full view. You'll see my blue dot in relation to it, so I'm nowhere near the route right now. Let's say I wanted to drive to the start point. In the upper right-hand corner of the screen, there's this white circle or this white icon with 3 horizontal dots. If I tap that, one of the options, second from the top, is directions to start, and that'll give me driving directions from my current location to the designated start point of this route. If I wanted to ride to the start, just tap navigate. Since I'm not at the start point, the app can see that, and if I tap route to start, now the app has created a route line that takes me to the official start point of this planned route. So yeah, once you download routes, you're going to actually find them in the offline section of your mobile app. It's not going to be in like your files folder or anything like that. It's nice and easy. It's all held in the Ride with GPS app for you to look at. Okay, and then here is our last question. Let me take a look. Do the community POI show in offline map or in an offline map or only when online? So if all you're doing is looking at the overlay, the highlights overlay, and you haven't actually added any to your route line, you need to be online in order to see those highlights, those points of interest that have been added by the community. Any point of interest or highlight that you have actually added to your route, whether it be to the route map or to the route line itself, those will be accessible even if you don't have any cell reception or Wi-Fi, as long as you've downloaded your route for offline use. All right. So I just wanted to quickly say one last time, thank you everybody for coming in and spending some time with me today. The recording of this will be making its way to YouTube very, very soon. In this slide, you'll see that if you have any follow-up questions, feel free to email info@ridewithgps.com. That'll take you directly to our support team, who are great and always accessible, happy to answer any questions you might have. Past the YouTube stuff that we do, we also have regularly scheduled webinars throughout the week that cover, the use of our mobile app, the use of sort of a deeper dive into the mobile app, a deeper dive into route planning. If you're interested in honing in your skills, that would be a really awesome option for you to try. And then lastly, I'll throw my email address out there too. My email address is Dylan, that's DYLAN, @ridewithgps.com. If you have any questions you want to throw my way, let me know what's going on. I'm always happy to help with that sort of stuff. But again, thanks everybody for your time today. I really appreciate it. And again, this recording will be up on YouTube shortly. Have a good day, everybody. Happy riding.